Babble with Ben.
This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be participating today. Welcome to the Babble, Jena Marino of Real Songwriters of Melbourne.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to finally have you on. I think we started talking about this earlier this year, and so it's good to have someone on who's so dedicated to building a community, actually, because it's I've talked about it on the show a lot, right? Like, part of the reason that I started this show is because there are so many talented artists out there, right? But they don't know how to get themselves heard. And I think you know the same problem, right? And you're sort of dedicated to helping people with that too.
Yeah, well, that's why I started the Real Songwriters of Melbourne in the first place, because I started out as a musician. Actually, this is very familiar because these studios where I, found many, many songwriters. I kind of dabbled in songwriting, but for me, I was more a corporate artist. But I just had met so many songwriters over the years, and I guess I started Real Songwriters of Melbourne 9 years ago, nearly 10 years ago. So we're going up to 2014, and, the internet was not as developed as what it is now. And so artists were really struggling, especially at a local level. We're really struggling as to how to get their songs heard, how to get new people to listen to their music, and just what to do in general. There were no real resources. So I have a love of writing and communications, and after my stint here, I moved and studied journalism, and I was basically given an assignment that was like, create a blog about whatever you want. And I was like, well, this is my opportunity to, use a platform to share stories about local artists. So that's how it started. RSOM started as an assignment. It started as a blog, which is crazy to think that, we're coming up to 10 years of this concept, and I'm really I can officially say it's now turned from a blog into a business, and it's come such a long way, and we're only in the really baby years of it becoming a business, but it's just grown to become a community. And that's what a lot of people know it as, a community first and foremost. And it's just been so beautiful meeting so many different songwriters, of all ages, no matter what genre. It's just so beautiful to be a part of their journeys and to create a safe space for artists to just find support first and foremost. So,
because it can be a rough world out there for artists, can't it?
Oh, yeah.
Especially in this day and age where I think, the difference between when I was a kid and which was the 90s, right? We were out buying, the way you got music was either the radio or, like CDs, right?
Yep.
And I think there was a much bigger distinction between the artists and the marketing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now, as we all know, right, the artist has got to market themselves, and then maybe, the higher ups, the record labels take an interest in it. But, whereas, especially in the 70s, right, you look at, people like maybe Nick Drake or other people who were like these sensitive, tortured souls, right? And they would never have been expected to go and, live stream for half an hour on a Friday night.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think, I guess that's where it comes in with artists, is that, we, especially in these last couple of years, I think artists really need to know how to build their own foundations, because it can get really lonely, and in 2020, obviously, all of our event schedule was, cancelled. I don't really want to talk about that time, but, but that was the most important time for me to really stand up and say, we need to stick together. We need to, continue to support each other, because so many of our artists could feel so, they just felt so alone, and so that's where RSOM really transformed in the last few years, because that's where our community just really started to lean on each other. We started to encourage collaborations and co-writing, and people started really getting out of their comfort zones. And, I used to organize, our networking nights had to move to an online format. And so we had, up to 50 songwriters in a call that, just really wanted to chat to somebody about music and how they were feeling, because, as musicians, sometimes our family and friends aren't in the same game. They don't really understand what we're going through. I'm exactly in the same boat, So it's just nice to be surrounded by people who get it And that's what everybody that comes through RSOM says. I'm just so glad that, I can talk about music and people understand what we're going through. So
how did things change with RSOM? I mean, give me an example of the things you were doing in 2019 versus 2020, right?
Oh, well, for me personally, I was actually working outside of music full time, studying along the way. So I was always trying to balance, building what this was and working on the side and funding, using my full-time salary to fund this and, and then one day, I guess, during the last 3 years, I really just decided this is what I want to do. I really just want to see if I can also have a career in music, because as much as I'm trying to help songwriters also find their own careers, I too wanted to have a career in music. I do want to have a career in music. And I guess for RSOM, it's such a unique concept, There aren't many communities. I guess back when I started, there wasn't any real community, but now along the way, there's obviously other similar communities that have formed. But it's still such a unique concept, especially in the music industry side of things, where it's very much a record label, environment. I was still navigating as to what it was going to be. So the last 3 years has really seen me, try different sorts of events. That's where we've had the networking events. We've got a really great relationship with the Bergie Seltzer, which we now have our open mics. And oh my goodness, they have been the most amazing thing that we have ever introduced. The Bergie are just fantastic. They're always willing to try different sorts of ideas. And we even do kids open mics now. Like imagine when songwriters were under 18 and, all they wrote were originals and they never had a stage to perform their songs. And, giving those kids the opportunity to just do that has been such an amazing experience. So yeah, without babbling on, the last 3 years has really been a real transformative phase of, listening to the community, what they want to learn about, what they want, and how do I be above that and how can we be different? What can we provide that can really help? And the number one thing is community, obviously, so that's where we've got all of our networking events. Our social media is just amazing. Everyone really encourages and supports each other as well. So sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Editing, guys.
It's called Babble with Ben. You are allowed to babble.
You picked the right guest, so we can babble forever. So that's what I mean. So this year I decided I was like, nah, that's it. I'm really going to put 100% of my time into growing this. And for me, it was such a huge decision to make. To sacrifice what you're so comfortable with and, having a job and things like that and to really go, we're going to go all in and grow this. It was a hard decision, but it's been the best decision because I mentally was burning out, and that's something we've spoken about, I was mentally burning out because I was trying to, manage, going to work and, try not to burn myself out there, but then also trying to give my creative time and energy into building this. And that was really hard. So that's why I decided at the start of the year, I'm just going to really give this a go. And then now as of, last month, we launched a membership and that really has solidified everything that I've been working to achieve over the last 9 years. Because everybody has gained so much, whether it's finding collaborators. We've had so many songwriters, looking for producers, looking for accompanist bandmates, other artists just to jam with, and we've proven from our networking events, artists have met, they've gone on to record and perform together. We've been a part of that. Now we help artists connect to industry. So with our networking events, I invite members of the industry to share their advice. Yeah, so anyone from like management, we've had publishing representatives, publicists, anyone in the industry, again, to lift that veil of the fact that just because you're an emerging artist, you're not ready to access industry. No, that's something I've always wanted to do as well. So really trying to bring friends that I've made in the industry to come in and help out. We've had booking agents as well. And share their music. So that's where our events come in. We've got a Spotify playlist, which this year we had over 75 new releases from our community. So over the years, everything that I've built has proven to help artists. So, I said to myself, nope, this needs to be forever. And so that's where these memberships came in, and we've had such an amazing response already. In the first 24 hours, we had members sign up. So to me personally, it was just a huge validation that, this is my career in music and this is what I want to do. So.
Because it's a bit scary doing that jump from, like maybe not a completely comfortable full-time job, but, just a steady supply of money, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's security.
And so once you jump from that security to maybe something more exciting, but something a bit more scary, it changes you. I did something very similar about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I went freelance in IT, right? And like now I'm looking at the same thing again with music. It's like, how do I make the jump from this to this? But doing that jump from being an employee to, being the person on top.
Yeah.
It is scary. I mean, how have you found that?
You said it exactly. Like, I've learned so much about myself this year. I've seen parts of myself that I didn't think I would see. I've cried a lot. But I've learned a lot about myself, and I'm learning to look after myself more because I don't want to burn out. So it's been a really interesting and challenging, but it's also been very rewarding because, everything that I've introduced into the business this year has been amazing, has had an amazing response. So, yeah, we're up to year 2 next year. So,
oh, wow.
They say year 2 is probably more important than year 1. So,
year 2 is where, well, look, I was going to make this classic joke that someone told me when I started being self-employed is that, when you are self-employed, you have to make sure that your boss isn't an asshole. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You've got when you're an employee, it's very easy just to go, oh, yep, so-and-so told me to do this and it was wrong and therefore, all the consequences are their fault. When you're self-employed, right, you really have your own mistakes kind of slap you in the face if they're there, 100%. Right? And there's no one else to blame. And I think it's actually a real growth spurt, really, in personal development. It's like, okay, you're really taking 100%, if you can't afford that thing, it is your fault, right?
Yeah.
You've got to go out and, get that income if you want that thing, right? And it's tough, but it's so rewarding because I think it means you get to write your own rules a little bit more.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed every day is just so different. I love that. I love that every day I get to do something different, like whether I'm in, sessions with artists, whether I'm taking social media content, whether I'm doing admin, I love the flexibility. At the same time, there's also that accountability. If you don't do the work, no one else is going to do it for you. You've got to do it. So a lot of people in the community know that I work a lot and I work too hard, but I have to put that on myself because otherwise I'm going to be upset if, things are going to fall behind. I have to be the one that has to do it. So
there is a trick and you do find this out in about the second or third year that there is like a sustainable limit, right? I found that I was always chasing perfection. I always wanted to be answering phone calls within an hour or so or, as the phone's ringing. But I've found, as my own journey being self-employed, right, I definitely have times where I have don't allow interruptions, right? If there's an hour and I've got to get something done, the phone is over there, it's in do not disturb mode, and rather than jumping for every new lead that comes in there. I mean, most people, if they're really after you, are happy to wait a day. More than that, like a text or something to say, hey, I am alive. I do recognize you. You want me, right? But that's all part of the journey. That's all part of the self-employed journey. And I think, year 2 is where you really do find sink or swim because 12 months you can sort of get by on adrenaline, right? But by that second or third year, all the adrenaline is gone and it's just what it is. And so, that's where it's magic. That's where you know whether it's going to work or not. So
yeah, that's it. And I'm looking forward to it because like you said, it's been you got to find those boundaries as to what works for you. And I've started to find that, which is something I wasn't good at prior to this year. So we'll see what happens in year 2.
That's great. So what's the typical journey of someone that gets involved with the Real Songwriters of Melbourne? I mean, let's say, we're going all the way back to someone like me who I think I saw someone I know was on one of the open mic nights or something. And I saw it on Instagram and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. What's this RSOM sort of stuff? So What's the journey from there for someone? Like what's someone who's gone from that stage to maybe being a member?
Well, there's a few different ways that you can be involved. Obviously, the membership, guarantees more things. So, for example, performance slots at our open mic nights. We also run showcases. Last year, they were at the Paris Cat Jazz Club. So, again, a much more intimate opportunity for artists to share their music. Members will get discounts to our events and things like that. So it's much more exclusive. We're not trying to limit that exclusivity. It just means that if you're a member, you get access to more.
Well, it's the premium product, isn't
correct,
it?
yeah.
You've got Spotify with ads, and then you've got the premium Spotify.
Exactly.
You've got RSOM, and then you've got the membership with RSOM.
Well, that's it. And I've always said everybody is welcome in our community, no matter who you are and where you come from and what music you play. But the membership, again, you're right. That's a really good way to put it. Premium with no ads. Become a member. But our open mic nights are open to all. So as with our open mics, obviously members will get a guaranteed spot, but that shouldn't shy people away from giving it a go because we do have such a high demand with our open mics. And we're actually going to be introducing a new format, which we are going to announce very, very soon.
Oh, okay. Yep.
It's very exciting. Again, Frankie at the Bergie, he's just a legend and we've worked together. This will be our 4th year, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. 4th year of working together. And so we really want to redevelop our open mics to continue bringing more people in. And so we're really excited to bring out these new formats. So open mics is obviously one way in. It's a really good way to, showcase your stuff. But then we also have our networking events. So if you're an artist, like for example, we have a lot of producers in our community that are looking for other collaborators. I always encourage them to come to our networking nights because it's a safe space. It's a safe space to just introduce yourself. Hey, I'm a producer. What do you play? Are you looking for a co-write? And again, many people have left our networking events with new contacts and just having a good time. People, again, just want to go out for dinner and talk with other artists about their journey. Like I'll never forget, there's this one artist in our community. She's absolutely beautiful. Her name is Maloney and she's a mother of 3 kids. And I'll never forget the first event that she came to was a networking event. It was actually a Christmas dinner post 2020 lockdowns. I just said, let's just all go out for dinner and meet face to face. And she goes, oh my goodness, it just feels so nice to not just talk about my kids all the time and just talk about music. Like she's obviously beautiful mother, loves her kids, but just that hour or two just to, be selfish, that little bit selfish and, think about herself and her music. Like that's her time. And I never forgot that. So it really gives that safe space to discuss that. So I guess they're the 2 entry points. And then the other side, I know there's a lot, Babble with Ben and Jena. The other side of that is the Release Academy. And that's also something that I've developed over, especially this year, was helping artists, again, learn how to build sustainability. Because again, as we spoke about at the start, I truly believe that artists need to learn how to empower themselves and how to build their own foundations. Because again, a lot of artists from what I've seen over the years are just waiting. They're just waiting for someone to find their music.
Oh,
they're waiting
it doesn't
to
work
get
that
picked
way.
up. They're waiting to get picked up. They're hoping that they'll get picked up for a festival slot. They're hoping that as soon as they get signed to a record label, they're going to give them all the answers. Whereas we've heard really bad stories about people that are signed with labels and the restrictions that they get. So why not learn how to be independent and why not learn how to build your own skills when it comes to, getting gigs, pitching your music to playlists, pitching your music to radio, getting on the radio. I've seen many songwriters that have never ever stepped foot in a radio station and it's so easy to do that. So teaching them these really important foundations so that when they are at a level that, they are ready to be signed, they've got such a huge portfolio behind them and they know what they're going to get themselves into rather than getting signed and then being like, oh, I didn't know that I had to, create all this stuff. I thought you guys were going to do it for me. No.
No, that TikTok
No.
live stream every week.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Release Academy is essentially It's either a 12 to 16 week program, depending on your knowledge of the
that was my
release
next
process.
question. Yeah, what does it look like? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 12 to 16 week program. So we have 3 tiers: our ultimate, amplify, and accelerator. So our ultimate is for artists who have never ever released a song before. They have absolutely no idea what's involved. Right up until your accelerator, which is, I've done releases before. I kind of know how to do one thing, but I really struggle with another thing, and I really just want your help on this.
Yeah.
So essentially, at the beginning, we sit down, we say, right, what do you want to achieve? Let's set our goal and strategy. Because a huge thing with artists is, especially if they want to lead up to a release, an EP, you've really got to set that strategy from single number one. Okay, well, if you want to achieve X, Y, and Z, let's work towards building that. So I sit down with them, kind of take me as like a mentor / personal trainer. I like to call myself a personal trainer because our sessions are very much an accountability check-in to say, right, how are you going this week? What have you done? What are you struggling with? What do you need help with? Or great, let's celebrate these achievements. Like, their content might be tracking really well. So let's continue to drive that. What other content ideas can we do to, continue that engagement? So we set the strategy, and then we have, social media content sessions, because my strength is social media and marketing with my background. And that's what I find a lot of artists come to me with. They're really confident on the PR and the traditional side of the release process. But when it comes to social media, that's where artists can struggle, which I completely understand. It's not something we were ever taught, right? So a lot of the time in the academy, it's very much content focused. But then I also teach them, how to write a press release EPK. Or if they do know how to do that already, how can we get that one step further? How can we make sure that we're getting people replying back to you, because artists might
of course
not know timelines, so I do call it a personal trainer program sort of thing, but it's essentially teaching artists the foundations, the mindset that they also need to have with releases, not putting all your eggs into one release, because sometimes it might not work out that way. So how can we set yourself up for longevity and sustainability in music, which is scary, but it's been amazing. Every single artist that has come through has just really loved just having someone there, just to hear them out. Sometimes I feel like it's just a venting session, but for them, that's what they need. That's what they need, because they don't have other people to turn to. They don't have friends that get it maybe, but they've really just enjoyed having someone make sure that they know what they're doing, make sure that they've done everything, and the results have been awesome. So it's been fantastic. So there's a few ways to get involved with RSOM.
Oh, that's great, because there is, if you are in your bedroom, with your guitar or with your synthesizers or with Ableton, and you don't know anybody, it's not always obvious in how you get to meet people. I mean, I went here to Box Hill, right? But this was like the expensive option, because it is $60,000 by the time you've paid for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's, and of course there's like tax thresholds and things you've got to worry about before you do start paying it back. But, on a computer somewhere, it tells me I'm, nearly 60 grand in debt, right? Whereas, if you didn't want to do that, and, there's like auditions and it's quite intimidating, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's quite good that there are other things that you can do. It's not the one gateway to fame and stardom, right? Like there's so many different ways that you can do it. And 100%. Your way sounds great, because it is hard, like you and I were discussing before, right? Like part of the reason I did this podcast is so that people get to meet each other, right? And because it's so hard. It's so hard.
It is so hard. And it's still to this day, I still hear artists that say, oh my gosh, I don't know any other artists. And I'm thinking, oh my God, once you get in it, once you get in the industry, you're just going to meet so many people. And it's just so nice to have people that get it, that support you, that will celebrate your release day, that will help share your music. As much as artists are trying to find fans outside of musicians can be your fans too. And I think a lot of people need to realize that, let's build a supportive and positive team around you of like-minded artists and people that can help lift you. And I think it's so important to have a community.
And Melbourne has a spectacular community. You may not realise it until you become a part of it, but once you are in in. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Like with my band Strawberry Lipstick, right? Like one of the things that we do about building community is we always, when we have gigs, we always love to like have cool support acts as well, right? And that's just the classic way of building community. Once you've got, I mean, you do have to have the band together, right?
Yeah.
But once you've got that band, once you've got, half an hour's worth of content, right? Of course, like then you can go and start building community. You support people, they support them. And it just is magic once you're in, and it sounds like the Real Songwriters of Melbourne does a lot of the stuff that I was looking for when I was younger, right? It's like, oh yeah, cool. This is how I meet people to collaborate with. This is how I meet people to run an event with as well, right? Like it's that next level.
Yeah, I mean, there was an artist in our community a couple weeks ago that hosted his own album launch, and his 2 support acts were people that he's been really close friends with in our community, and how special that was. Really special for me to see on social media. I wish that I was at the launch. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. The artist is called Wizardom, and he's really just transformed in the community in the last few years. But to have 2 of his closest peers from the RSOM community support him, like that's just awesome. It's just such an awesome thing to see. Yeah.
And there is something special about those launches as well. It's very easy to sort of overlook them and just go, okay, well, I'm just going to hit release on DistroKid or Spotify or not Spotify, SoundCloud or whatever it is. Like.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of go, oh, hey, family and friends on my immediate circle, like, here's my thing. Have a listen to it, please.
Oh, it's huge.
But then when you do the release party and maybe you get some supports and there's people that are there to watch you live, that's pretty amazing too, and it's good that you're encouraging that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally. There's one artist I'm currently working with in the academy, and they've never put on a live show before, and we're working towards her. She released her EP last month, and she's like, yep, Jena, I'm ready to put on a launch. And because of my experience running events, like I can run events like clockwork now. It's good and scary at the same time that it's just like clockwork. But now she can seek that support from me in our one-on-ones to learn how to put on a EP launch, because if you're running an EP launch and an EP release, that's massive. That is so much work.
Yeah.
Why should we put that pressure on ourselves? So we're working together to, work on a realistic timeline as to, give the song and give the EP its airtime, but then let's work to create a beautiful show for this launch. So yeah, it's amazing.
It is important to space them out, because I've made the idea where it's like, okay, it's going to be shock and awe. I'm going to have I'm going to have the thing come out on Friday, and then we're going to have the release party on Saturday. But all the little things you've got to do to promote the release, like the little talking head sort of stuff, like the narrative, I think, like the story of the song and how it came up, right? If you're trying to, unless you pre-recorded that like a month ago, right? It's even as we were talking about before, right? Even once you've got the content made, there's still a fair amount of time you've got to do, scheduling it as a draft in Instagram, and then remembering, at 7:00 on a Thursday to actually release it, and then to engage with the comments, to share it across all your platforms. It is a release is so much more work than just hitting release on the distribution platform.
And that is exactly what I tell my artists in the program. Like, releasing music is hard work, and your best friend and your worst enemy is going to be time. And there have been artists that, they get so excited. They've just received their master and they're like, yep, Jena, I want to release it in 4 weeks. I'm like, whoa. Oh. Love it. I love it. I'm like, trust me, you're going to be better off if you wait, because what are you thinking your visuals are going to look like? Have you done your photos? Have you done your artwork? What are your goals? And they're like, So I always, and there are people in the industry that might say, you need to be on it and release consistently. But those artists who are getting it and who are releasing consistently are ones that are planned and prepared. You can't, that's where burnout happens. Yeah. Burnout is something I see a lot in our community, and that's because artists put all their energy and they put all their hopes in one release, and then they think, oh my God, I didn't get the attention that they wanted. I got to release another one, and then I got to do it in 4 weeks, and because they rush to do it, they're not getting the success that they want. Whereas I'm really trying to teach that you really need to ensure that you're planning, setting as much time as you need, because that's where the results are going to be better, because you actually have planned for that, And of course, you can't always plan absolutely everything. Coming from me, believe me, things are going to pop up. But, if that does happen, you're not falling yourself short because you haven't prepared. So, Yeah.
And look, I'm finding in my own journey, right? Like I've put plenty of releases out there where I did just, hit release, right? Like, I'm like, okay, maybe I had like a couple of JPEGs saying, okay, 1 week, 2 weeks, so that sort of stuff, right? But then you go and, you think about this song that you worked for weeks and weeks and weeks upon, you paid money to get it produced and mastered, right? And then you're sitting there and it's got like 10 streams and you're like, oh, no, why? You don't think it's bad music, but you realize that you are up against people, anyone can do that. Anyone can sort of put a song out and just hit release, right? The people that are going from like dozens of streams to hundreds of streams and thousands of streams, they're the ones, like you were saying, right, who are putting the marketing into it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're essentially, then they're putting time into it as well, because at the end of the day, if you hit release on release day and then sit back and just wait, I always say to my artists, the work doesn't stop on release day. How can we continue? No. How can we keep continuing to promote your songs to these artists? Because you might have new followers that might find your page 2 weeks after release. And if you're not constantly showing it, then how are people going to find you? And I always hear that saying, in retail, it takes 7 times for someone to see something in order to make a decision as to whether to buy it. Now, I know that totally can't apply into music, but, if you're only posting once and thinking everybody's going to see that one post, you are absolutely wrong.
Especially if it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a matter of always being active and consistent. And of course, we can all talk about, how we're not content creators, but, I think in a way we are our own business, and part of that business is marketing,
Absolutely,
So it's just learning how to make it work for you. And that's what I also do as well, being realistic. We've got artists in our community that work full time that just don't have the time. Sure. Well, how can we make it work in your schedule so that you can still achieve the best that you can with these restraints? And then we have artists that, are working 4 days a week and, okay, great. You've got 2 days off in the week. Let's focus that energy onto music, so you've just got to make it work for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really does, depend on your energy that you put into it as well, right?
Correct.
Like,
yeah.
As we were talking about before, it's not like the old days where the record labels would pluck someone out of obscurity and then do all the marketing for them. Like now, because anyone can do the basic, hit release and post the cover art, right? You've got much harder competition, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to really cut through that because like any day I can go and see on my Facebook feed, so and so's put this out, so and so's put this out, and as you're right, if you only see it the once, it's so easy to miss. You might just be eating your breakfast or something, and you sort of scroll through that and go, oh, that's interesting. And if it's just a static JPEG, one thing I really like, which is probably something you do as well, right?
Yeah.
Is you have the little video thing as well. That seems to get the attention as well, like video and then a Spotify link or something like that.
Video content is much more engaging. Certainly when it comes to the magical algorithm, which I always get asked a lot about. For a platform like Instagram, they favor video content. So for artists in the academy, that's where I really try and, and it's hard. It's not easy getting in front of the video camera. Believe me, people think that, just because I've been doing it doesn't mean that it's hard. It doesn't mean that it's easy, I should say. But video content is a preferred method of content. So, it goes higher in the newsfeed. When you refresh your newsfeed, you're going to see a reel first,
Absolutely.
So it's trying to get above that, but then also how do we make it original so that it speaks you and your music, not just a marketing ad. Hey guys, my new single is out. Go and listen to it. Okay, well, why?
That's better than nothing.
That is better than nothing. I must admit that is better than nothing. But, it's always going one above that and being like, how can we continue to engage? And social media has really helped me. It's really helped my business. So that's why I really try and talk about it with artists. How can we make it work for you? How can we create authentic content that people are going to love and content that people are going to love and connect with your music? So I don't know, it's a bit holistic with me. It's always going into the vulnerable, deep and vulnerable stuff. And they're like, oh, but artists that have really done that and no big changes. It's literally just, being themselves and sharing a meaning of their song like that. Their posts alone have done so much better because artists have been like, or fans have been like, I get that. I'm going through that same thing. So they've found that connection and now these artists are building a community themselves. And that's how you build longevity, really. in my opinion.
That authentic vulnerability, like those are the key words. Maybe, get one of your artists just to release an album called Authentic Vulnerability.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. It's all the deep and meaningful stuff. We love it. We hate it at the same time, but
it's who we are, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like, that's part of it. And that's why I think, being anything in the music industry, right? Like it's because it's who you are that it's so thrilling, but also because it also makes it so scary at times too.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with RSOM. Like when I started it, I was very much not on camera. Like I was very much like, no, it's about the artists. I am just going to put my logo up and that's it. But then I don't get it. What is it? Why does this exist?
Yep.
I thought people were coming to my shows and thinking that it was, Babble with Ben's EP launch. They didn't understand what they were getting into. So it wasn't until, the last 3 years where I was like, okay, I've got to brave it. I've got to get on camera. And so during 2020, so for those who know RSOM for a while, a few years ago we did a web series called Real Songwriters of Melbourne TV, which was filmed at Wick Studios. We interviewed about 6 artists. I decided to bring that to Instagram Live. And that actually involved me again getting on camera and talking to these artists. And we just had some really deep conversations. And a lot of the things that the artists were saying, I was also feeling. So then I started feeling more comfortable to share my side of the story. And it wasn't until I started to become vulnerable and transparent myself that I've developed such a trust within my community. And that's why it's been able to build. So it's interesting seeing it from both sides. It's not until you become vulnerable that you gain that connection. I know it sounds weird, but it's not until you go through it that you get it.
Oh no, I totally get it. Yeah. And it's something, it's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? That you get that strength through vulnerability.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Once you let people, and you and I are both singers, right? And so you can sort of see when, like, you probably see like maybe some newer artists who have still got the walls up, right? Like they're trying to project this like strong persona, and it's like, oh, like I want to connect, but you're kind of pushing me away. And then once you put the vulnerability in, and some of my, like Jeff Buckley's one of my heroes, right? And he always had this vulnerability, even though he could do these like really, strong moments, right? And I think, and especially for me as like a middle-aged man, like you're supposed to sort of man up and, be tough and be reliable. But then, when you have those moments, it lets people. It's funny how much people want to help. I find like you can have this really bitter and cynical view about the world, but then, sometimes when you need help, you do just get it, right? Yeah,
totally. We have artists in our community that, have kids and, they're in their 40s and 50s. And, I'm just like, just share your journey. We just want to be involved. And there's a beautiful artist in our community, Kieran J. Phillips, and he's just really transformed. And everybody knows him now as, one of the most supportive artists because he's actively always, messaging and commenting and sharing new releases. But we also love watching his journey about raising his daughter. And, again, you don't have to reveal every single thing about your life, sorry. But that's a part of his music. Him and his daughter write songs together, so even just sharing that little bit of a bite, we've all just grown a love and a connection like we're with Kieran in his journey. So it's awesome. That's amazing.
That's super good. Well, Jena, we'll wrap it up here. Now, I'm just making sure. Now, by the time this podcast gets out, it'll be 2024. So
oh my gosh!
Happy New Year, Happy Christmas for everyone. What's coming up for the Real Songwriters of Melbourne in early 2024?
Oh, wow. So as I said, we are redeveloping our open mic night. So probably by the time this podcast airs, we would have announced it. If not, stay tuned. And I've also just locked in 2 amazing special guests for our first networking night of 2024. Which will be in February.
Now, do you need to be a member to go to the networking nights?
You don't need to be a member, but if you are a member, you get a discount on our tickets. And you also get free online admission. So we do a hybrid event. So because we have artists from regional Victoria and interstate that also are a part of our events. So if you're a member, you get free admission. If to the online admission, I should say, you're still more than welcome to come if you are or not a member.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
And so there was the networking night, and I interrupted you saying something else.
That's okay. No, it's just open mics. So our open mics, we'll be announcing that, networking nights, and of course there'll probably be a bunch of new other things. One of my biggest goals for 2024 is to host our first regional Victorian event.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's been another goal of mine that I've been wanting to do, but obviously with the last couple of years that wasn't easy. So I'm hoping, this is my accountability check, 2024 first regional Victorian event, because again, we have such a growing number of songwriters from Geelong, especially Ballarat.
I was going to ask,
Yeah, Geelong. I'm hoping it'll be Geelong. So again, accountability check. If it's in another state, if it's in another place, I apologise, but definitely aiming for Geelong for our first event, because again, we have artists that come all the way from Geelong to perform at our open mic. So why don't we continue to foster the amazing community that Geelong has built by building it right at the source? So it'll be awesome.
And you've got the Surf Coast just down the road as well. So
Yeah. So open mic, networking night, and then hopefully a Geelong networking night. That would be awesome.
Very good. That's a lot to look forward to. Fantastic. Well, thanks once again for coming on. Now if people want to find you on the internets, right, on the intertubes, where do they find you?
Really easy. It's just rsom.au. We're on all the socials at RSO Melbourne for Instagram, but I'm sure you'll share it.
Well, we were talking about how Instagram collaborators let you do 4 now.
Yeah, I believe it's up to 4 collaborators, so you'll see it everywhere.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you, Ben.